It's time to set the record queer. Submerge your waffle iron in the dirt for at least 1 year before attempting to cook an actual waffle.
Welcome back to Author Month that stretches over the end of October and the beginning of November on Setting the Record Queer, a podcast where queer people talk about the pursuits and communities they love. This is episode 30, and it's with a vlogger and memoirist. My name is Alexis, my pronouns are it, its, and she, her, and I'm one of your hosts.
My name's Kaylee, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm your other host. And Alexis, I am way more relaxed because Ragnarok is over. It went really well, and I don't have to spend like countless hours a day restreaming and hosting and stuff.
Yeah, thanks to the robot voice in the last episode, we don't actually have to go list the statistics back, but now that it's actually ended for us in recording, in like the recording time bubble, it was pretty fun. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Dubbing was wonderful and great and absolutely the highlight of the event as predicted.
Fun. We can, if VODs are done by that point, we can put a link to that in the show notes. Otherwise, we can't. So 50-50 if that'll be in the show notes.
Yeah. And Kaylee, something else exciting happened after the event ended that I think you might want to talk about.
Yeah, I am floored by this, but apparently my group, the RPG Valkyries, we're now official Take This sponsors, which is wild.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There is a lot of money to get there, like
we're our logo's on their website now. Rooms. Like I don't know how to put it quite into words on Twitter. I just put a bunch of exclamation points. I think that about sums it up.
I mean, I feel like the auditory equivalent of an exclamation point is just ah. So why don't you try that?
No, that's the audio equivalent of a bunch of A's.
Oh, you're right. Okay. All right. We'll have to keep thinking about this.
All right.
You could just say like shift 1, shift 1, shift 1, shift 1. But like that necessitates QWERTY keyboards, so like our dear friends who used Vorak would be excluded from that, which is no good.
Oh, that's okay. I'm half QWERTY keyboard. What does that even mean?
I don't know, but I laughed at it anyways. Well, my life has not been nearly as entertaining as Kaylee's over the past couple weeks. I've just been doing school as usual. We're having a Halloween party in a couple days. That'll be fun. By party, I mean like we're inviting a couple friends over to eat candy and watch like old cartoons Halloween episodes, which will be a great time for all. And by for all, I mean, again, for like 6 people because our house is tiny.
It's going to be great, though. Speaking of parties, party has the letter R in it. And the word bird has the letter R in it. And
there was a much easier transition joke here that you could have made, and you went with this, and you know what? I respect it. I'm impressed. But why?
Because that was all I could think of. It's the only letter in common with party. No, there's an A. Jackson. Anyway, why don't you introduce yourself before I just like before the whole leg goes in my mouth too?
Yeah, thanks. I love that segue. Classic one there. Hi, yeah, my name's Jackson Bird. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a writer, speaker, video maker, and got a new book out called Sorted Growing Up, coming out and finding my place, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Was this your first book?
Yes.
How does it feel that you can just be like, I'm a published author now?
Yeah, well, I guess I was published in I wrote a peer poem that was in another book, but yeah, this is really, the first time, and it feels weird. Decidedly weird is how it feels.
I can only imagine. I mean, like, I guess, yeah, you have other, like, types of media, of, like, written media published, but, like, you can also just go, like, the high class stirring a wine glass sort of route and just be like, yes, I am a memoirist. And that's a thing you can say now, because you are a published memoirist. By the way, we had to look up before we started actually recording this episode and confirm that was, in fact, a word. It is, before you ask.
But now
you're a certified memoitier.
Memoitier. What did you say before too? Memoirine? Or memoir?
Memoir.
Anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this show. Let's start at the beginning. So you've been vlogging for a little while. What made you get started with that, and how long have you been doing it?
So technically, I've posted first videos to YouTube. My first videos, not the first video, but my first videos to YouTube in 2007. But it was just like me and my friends goofing around, like, and it was things like I thought it was like Photo Bucket, you know? It was just like a place to upload videos, and didn't really think that like people saw them publicly. Over the years, 2008, 2009, started realizing that there was a community of like vloggers and people who were growing audiences on YouTube. But I didn't really think that was something that I necessarily wanted to do, but I enjoyed sort of being a part of that viewership audience. And then when I was in college, I started volunteering for the Harry Potter Alliance, which is a charity that basically uses the power of fan culture and the power of storytelling to mobilize fans towards social action. They're an awesome organization.
That's super cool.
Yeah, they started in 2005. They've got like over 200 chapters in 25 nations around the world. So they're really rad. And I started volunteering for them as a video editor. And because a lot of their like major partners that they did work with were some of the bigger YouTubers of the time, like John and Hank Green and the Five Awesome Girls and people like that, they were like, oh, we should probably have a YouTube presence. So they picked a few of us college-aged volunteers to kind of be the face of the YouTube channel. And so 3 times a week, we got to make videos that were about updates on what the HPA was up to, or just talking about issues that we cared about that were relevant to the values of the organization. And so that was the first time that I got like a larger following. It was not large. It was like 500 views a video, but it was still like people that I didn't know were following my social media and like cared about what I had to say. So from that, I sort of spun out into my own channel, and I didn't really have a direction for it for a long time, as many people did not, like most people didn't in the early days of YouTube. I was just sort of like making videos on whatever topics came to me. But I did make a lot of videos on LGBTQ plus issues, because at the time I was not out as trans, but I was dealing with a lot of stuff in my head and just sort of in a very lonely sort of solitude type of way, like reading all of these books and, consuming all of these trans stories and trying to figure myself out, and didn't have any outlet for it. So the outlet became making educational LGBTQ plus content on YouTube, with everyone thinking I was just a real great stand-up ally.
Ain't that a mood?
Right? I feel like a lot of people have been that person. It's like, wow, you know so much about the LGBTQ plus community. You're such a good ally. And inside you're just like, yes, ally.
Yes.
But it worked out well, because then by the time I finally did come out publicly on my YouTube channel, at that point I had maybe like 10,000 subscribers or something. But my core audience had learned from me, and then of course from lots of other people and their own experiences eventually, but a lot of them had like learned from me of like how to respond when someone comes out to you, and what does it mean to be trans. They were like educated on all of the topics by the time I eventually came out, so that kind of worked out conveniently for me.
I appreciate the go big or go home coming out. As someone whose first time being out as a trans woman, as opposed to definitely totally a cis woman, don't ask any questions, in the speedrunning community, was showing up at the event that 1,500 people were at. I appreciate the go big or go home come out, honestly.
You undersold it there, too, because 1,500 people were there, but 150,000 were watching.
I mean,
Wow.
I wasn't on stream. I wasn't on stream that year.
Oh, you weren't?
Then 6 months later, I was on stream. That's a whole nother story. Anyways, this is not a podcast episode about me or about speedrunning, because we've done like 2 or 3 of those at this point, and I don't think we need any more of them. So that's, I think, a good little rundown on well, I guess actually, before we move on from vlogging, so do you want to talk about how your channel grew from there? You start Harry Potter Alliance, get your own thing, and it starts to balloon out. How do you get all the way to today, I guess? And then even how does that turn into you being, a speaker giving an actual real TED Talk, which is cool as heck, and writing a memoir. So how do you get from there to now?
Yeah, well, so I think, like I said, I didn't quite have a direction, but I was always doing things here and there on the channel. One thing that took off early on, and this was before I came out, was a series I did called Will It Waffle, in which I put random things on a waffle iron to see what happened. It was not cooking, wasn't science, barely comedy, just chaos. And that really resonated with people. A couple of those videos took off, George Takei posted on his blog and stuff like that. So that was how I got to the 10,000-ish range of followers. And for a while I was just posting waffle videos, so I actually did have to have kind of a plan of okay, I know in the next year I'm probably going to come out, and if my channel's only waffles, I need to start posting personal videos again so that it's not so out of left field when I post this very personal video. And so that was sort of a return to some of the LGBTQ plus content or what have you. And after I came out, I said at first, I was this is not going to become a trans channel. I made a second channel to do all the classic YouTube transition videos, this is my voice 2 months on T kind of stuff. And but the thing was, even on that channel with such a small following, those videos were doing really well. They were getting a great response. And so just slowly over the years, I started doing more and more trans or generally LGBTQ plus content on my main channel, and less of the waffle videos. And it really came to a head at one point when I was looking at the analytics and realizing that the waffle videos were not performing well. They weren't resonating with people as much, but the LGBTQ plus content really was. And I was getting such a great response from people. And, one thing that I had told myself when I was working on coming out, I knew because of the following that I had online and because of my professional work, at that point I had been an employee of the Harry Potter Alliance, full-time job being a spokesperson for this Harry Potter charity. So I had a large sort of professional network as well. So there wasn't really an option to not come out publicly. And to make that feel less of a sort of obligation of a thing that I had to do, one thing I just kept reminding myself was well, remember the lack of representation that I had growing up. There was no one. There were no trans guys. I didn't know trans guys existed. And it was so lonely and it was so hard to not have anyone. And so I was if I could be the representation for even just one person, then that could make this worth it. So that's how I was okay with publicly coming out. And I've kept that in mind as I go on, just the role model that I didn't have, provide the resources that I didn't have when I was a teenager. And keeping that in mind has helped me kind of figure out which way to go with the channel. And it's helped it grow a lot. Last year, I hit some milestone of followers. I forgot what. And a lot of my older audience was well, make a Will It Waffle video in celebration. So I did, but I realized more than half of my followed me since I had last made a Will It Waffle video. So they were all what the heck is this video? What are you doing? No one knew what was going on. So yeah, I guess I've grown a lot since I threw away the waffles and just started talking about trans stuff all the time.
Okay, before we spend the rest of this podcast talking about trans stuff, though, I have to know 3 things. 1, what was the worst waffle? 2, what was the best waffle? 3, did you ever test an actual waffle as a control?
Oh, great questions. So the best and worst, those are actually a little tricky because it's was it the one that waffled the best or tasted the best or what? The worst ones were always the ones that were just kind of boring, which was a surprising challenge of Will It Waffle, because it started as a parody of Will It Blend, the Blend Tech show where they would blend up iPhones and stuff. And that's really visually entertaining because you can see inside the blender and you can see it being destroyed. With a waffle iron, it's all covered. So unless it's super messy and coming out of the sides, you can't actually see anything while it's happening. And so that became a challenge of trying to find things that were actually exciting to waffle. So the worst one would be something that just didn't look very exciting on the waffle iron. Or the time I tried to waffle Guinness, and I literally just poured beer straight onto the waffle iron. And of course, nothing happened.
I don't think that would work.
Honestly, I'd expect something to happen, and that's for you to no longer have a waffle iron.
We'll get there with the control answer. The best one, I really liked, I waffled ramen, like cooked ramen, and then waffled it, is delicious. So good.
Huh.
Yeah, it's tasty.
Wouldn't have expected that, but honestly, in retrospect, not surprised. College students who listen to Setting the Record Query, you heard it here first.
I don't know if I've
Although
ever told
what
the
college campus has a waffle iron, so...
I don't know if I've ever told the ramen pie story on the podcast, and if I haven't, I never will.
Oh, I'm so intrigued now.
Look forward to the ramen pie adventure and taking the minutes coming to you soon.
Absolutely
or
not.
Never. Or never. Anyways, question 3. Did you ever waffle an actual waffle as a control?
So personally, I waffle actual waffles all of the time. The main time that I waffled an actual waffle... So it starts with not waffling an actual waffle. So every year I go to a Harry Potter conference called LeakyCon, and for several years in a row it was in Orlando, Florida. And so there was one year I was down there, I did a live Will It Waffle show. We waffled a bunch of messy stuff like cookie dough and maybe marshmallows. I don't know, I just wanted to make a spectacle of it. But it kind of broke my waffle iron. This was the first waffle iron I started the show with, and surprisingly had kept up for many episodes, but it started having some exposed wires. It just didn't look like it was going to be safe to use anymore. But meanwhile, I had a guest who wanted to waffle with me, and I was like, oh, I need like a backup waffle iron. So some friends went and like bought me a second waffle iron, and that guest appearance went great. It was all good, but then I'm packing up to go home, and I'm like, I don't want to carry 2 waffle irons with me back on the plane, but I also don't want to just throw away this waffle iron that I started the show with. It was like sentimental. I needed to give it a good send-off. So my friend was like, well, we're going to be back here next year for LeakyCon again, here in Orlando next year. So how about you bury it and then dig it up again next year? So we did. We buried it in the parking lot of the hotel. I've made a video of this whole thing. You can go watch it. But it was a secret for a whole year because I knew what I wanted to do was when I did Will It Waffle Live again the next year, I was going to go dig it up. And I was not expecting it to be there. But I would dig it up and then I would like waffle on it for the live show. And shockingly, it was still there. We dug it up again. Oh, no, I hadn't put it in a bag. I think I just like left it there. Or maybe I put it in a bag to keep it safe. But anyways, we dug it up. And so during the live show, I had a normal waffle to make. And I waffled it on this waffle iron. But I had not cleaned it, so it was covered in dirt. And everyone who was there still just talks about the dirt waffle because a lot of people wanted to eat it, which I did not encourage. But they all just came up and took bits of the dirt waffle. And so some people will come up to me and be like, I ate the dirt waffle.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
So it wasn't quite a control, but it was the one time I did a normal waffle.
All right, well... That's not what I was expecting to talk about tonight, but I'm really glad we got there.
Me too. Waffles are always great to talk about.
True.
But so you were asking, how do I then get to the TED Talk and the memoir and stuff from my random YouTube adventures. And part of it was YouTube. I think, when you're in the educational sphere of YouTube, which I kind of am, you often sort of straddle the lines with the real educational world and with the nonprofit world. And I had actually, my day job for many years. I guess I knew a lot of people who worked in a lot of different fields of education and activism and stuff like that. And so even with less followers than one might expect for some of the opportunities I had, I was able to sort of, get in the door in various places. So it's more of that, really, of how it happened. Sometimes people are like, oh, here's this YouTuber book. And I'm like, yeah, but, when you have barely 70,000 subscribers on YouTube, like, there's no publisher that's knocking down your door being like, please write a book for us. It's just that I wrote a book, and I also happen to make YouTube videos.
So how did you get to the TED Talk specifically? I'm just curious because that feels like such a lofty thing to me.
So it's on hiatus now. I don't know if it's going to come back, but TED does a number of programs, one of which is called the TED Residency. And so it's basically you can apply, and if you have a idea worth spreading, that's like their tagline, then you get to actually work out of TED's offices here in New York City for 14 weeks working on your project, your idea worth spreading. And at the end of it, you get to give a TED Talk in their in-house theater in TED's headquarters. And so my speaking agent, like, mentioned it to me because she had done it in the inaugural class, and she was like, you should do this. So I applied and I got it. And the whole time, and still to this day, it blows my mind that I had that opportunity and was able to give that TED Talk, which there since then have been so many more official TED Talks from various trans people. But at the time, there were not many like official TED Talks, so not counting TEDx Talks. There's plenty of TEDx Talks, but of like actual TED Talks, there weren't that many from trans people talking about trans things. There were a couple from trans people talking about sexuality, and there were a lot from like doctors talking about trans kids and stuff. But yeah, so it's a very 101 kind of TED Talk. A lot of my queer and trans friends are always like, it's so vanilla, it's so boring. But it's a good ally video, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got that impression from watching it.
Yeah, kind of playing it safe. I had an uncle who was like really scared of me being public about all of this stuff, and then he watched the video and he was like, oh, yeah, no one's gonna get upset by that. I was like, well, I guess that has its benefits.
Let's
Yeah, it's scary, right? Especially with it coming out now and like talking to lots of people about it and doing events. It's like I just keep being like, oh, I did that. There's lots of personal stuff out there for the world to see now. I think, like a lot of things in my life, I just sort of a little bit fell into it and got really lucky. When I was crowdfunding for my top surgery, like it's 4 years ago now. Oh no, more than 4 years ago. But I saved up a lot of money myself. I took on extra jobs. I was doing all of this, but then as the time got closer, I had a little bit of money I still sort of needed and was finally convinced, do a crowdfunder. People will help you out. They want to help you. But I still felt like I needed to give something back to them. And so I'm in, kind of the punk DIY scene, and we like zines, just little self-published like magazine things. So I was like, I'll do a zine. I'll give all the donors a zine. And I thought I would just write like a quick 5 pages about my relationship to my body. It was called Free My Nipples, the story of my chest. And yeah, I was like, oh, this will be a quick thing I can pump out in a couple of days and send out to donors, like 5 pages, something like that. Well, I sat down to write and realized how much I guess I had just sort of been keeping up in my head, and ended up spitting out 75 pages, which is much longer than a normal zine. They're usually only a couple of pages long. But I still turned it into a zine. I still sent it out to donors, and then I was like selling it at conferences I would go to and stuff. And it got a really good reaction, and I really enjoyed the process of writing it. But also being that it was a zine, it was very rough drafty. And I just sort of had a growing feeling that I wanted to kind of complete the project, I guess. It really felt like I could expand it into a full book and maybe one day publish it, and maybe that would help people, could be a resource, add to some of the representation that's needed. But I did go back and forth for a number of years where I was like, maybe I don't want to do this because I don't want to have a memoir out there. I don't want all this personal information published in the print. Or, maybe mine isn't the voice that needs to be heard. And so I like tried writing a novel for a while, and that wasn't really working. And right around the time when I was sort of emotionally coming back around to the idea of writing a memoir, I just sort of happened to have a meeting with a publisher and sort of just fell into this book deal. And so then at that point, the nonfiction and fiction kind of work in opposite ways in publishing. With nonfiction, you usually have maybe some samples or an outline and then a really hefty book proposal, and that's when you get the book deal. Whereas with fiction, you've usually written the manuscript, you've gone through several rounds of edits, and trying to get a book deal. And so in this case, I had the zine and some ideas of how I wanted to expand it, and then I got the book deal and was given not very long to expand the whole thing into the full book that it is now. So I more than doubled the original text and added in all the educational sidebars that are in it that kind of give you some 101 or historical context of things. That was a lot of rambling words. I don't know if that really answered your question.
No, you definitely did.
I'm really glad you mentioned that comparison of fiction and nonfiction, given that our last episode was with a sci-fi author, and she talked like in depth about the publishing process. So I am really glad that came up. That is some good continuity right there.
Bam. Yeah, I will say, talking to more and more authors, it's like there are some broader things that are definitely for sure, like the fiction versus nonfiction ways. If you're going through traditional publishing, yes, that is the chronology of how it works. But like, man, every author I talked to had such a different way of getting published. I was on a panel with like 6 authors while I was moderating it, but every single one of us had a completely different way that we got our first book deal or our first agent or something. Like, one person had the normal sending query letters, one person was doing like a Twitter contest, one person met an agent at a party who had previously rejected her. I had my weird thing, so it was just like, it's a weird world.
Well, I don't feel the need to almost faint again over how stressful the publication process sounds.
Yeah, I think we got our reactions to that one out last episode, so I will say the same thing, that I am glad you got through it as well.
Yeah. I am too.
Well, I guess I could ask. I mean, this is probably a really obvious one-word answer question, but was it worth it?
Well, the book only came out. Oh wait, what is today? Oh my gosh, tomorrow is its 1 month anniversary. 1 month birthday. Yeah, so it only recently came out. I mean, yes, I'm sure it's gonna be worth it, but it does feel very new, and I'm still kind of in that like nervous, stressed out, like, oh, what do people think kind of phase. But I think ultimately it'll definitely have been worth it. I mean, the experience itself was really, really cool and fun, like learning more about the publishing world, going through the editing process, like as a writing exercise, that was all very cool. And honestly, the positive responses I have gotten so far of just how many people have been touched by it, have been helped by it, how many people have been like, I'm sending this to my parents, and then I've gotten messages from the parents, and so like I think all of that definitely makes it worth it.
Well, I am glad. I would like, once again, sort of like an obvious thing, but I would have felt really bad if you answered no to that question.
I know, right?
So.
I know, I was almost going there for a second. It's just I speak from a place of nerves and stress first sometimes. I gotta work on that.
No, it's not like a problem or anything. It would just be such an unexpected answer. Like, no, I hated it.
We would have rolled with it. Like, that's not something we've had on this podcast before. Someone being like, this was bad and I wouldn't do it again. But I think that's a valid story to tell. Not that it needs be yours.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not mine. But yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I think those are the kinds of things we need to talk about more, probably, because a lot of times everyone's just like, yeah, everything's happy-go-lucky. And like, yeah, we need to talk more about when things aren't.
Well, I mean, actually, Kaylee did one of your Taking the Minutes episodes on failure, right? Like, that was a whole thing.
Yeah, on my attempts to learn to draw that I gave up on in a week.
You should go listen to that, wonderful listeners, if you haven't already. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Anyways, how did it feel to like put so much of yourself out there?
It's still nerve-wracking sometimes. I mean, I think I went back and forth in comparing it to my YouTube channel, because sometimes, especially other creators who are more like educational creators or like travel creators or something, they'll look at my channel, they'll be like, oh my gosh, your channel's just all personal stuff. How do you do it? And I'm like, actually, like, I'm talking about like gender and sexuality, but I'm rarely sharing my own stories. I'm often talking from a more like academic, in an accessible way, but a more academic perspective or like a generalized perspective. Like, I've always been very, very cautious about the personal boundaries that I put up. Like, I've never really talked about anything too much of my personal life, not too much about my family, nothing about my dating life. Like, I've always had these boundaries up, and those kind of remained in the book. I guess not at all. No. I don't talk presently about stuff in the book, but you get a lot of the history. But that would be sort of the thing, when I was thinking about, did I want to write a memoir, I would have friends be like, well, you already have so much of your personal life on the internet. What's different? I'm like, well, the difference is, A, I don't as much as it seems like, and B, it just seems more serious to be in a book, like this physical thing that lots of people might just find in a bookstore who don't know who I am. I mean, hopefully for sales that will happen. Whereas, my stuff online is a little bit more, you got to seek it out. And you probably want to be hearing from a trans person or something like that. So yeah, it's on such a larger, more permanent scale. It feels like, even if maybe it's not. So that was definitely nerve-wracking. But then I just also started thinking like, well, maybe I just want to tell it on my own terms. Not that I think I'll ever be like exposed in some way or something like that, but it does feel nice to be able to be in control of your own story, to have that agency to get to tell it your way. And also, being a public speaker, like when you're on the speaking circuit, they always like you to have a book that's kind of like your manifesto of like, this is all the stuff I believe and talk about. And so I knew that would be a really helpful thing for me to have, and that I really kind of wanted to get out there with all the educational sidebars and stuff. It's just sort of like, all right, this is my view of how all this works. And, maybe I won't necessarily agree with it in a couple of years because we all evolve and change as humans, but like, it's at least a foundational point. And also helpful, going back to the personal side of things, like, when people maybe ask questions that are a little too personal that, we as trans people get all the time, instead of having to answer, I can just be like, read this book, go take it, learn from that. I don't want to talk to you.
That does sound like a valuable tool to have during those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even think of it that way until I was talking to, oh my gosh, I cannot remember, Dylan Shlonsky. I'm mispronouncing his name, Shlonsky, but he wrote The Last Time I Wore a Dress, which was a memoir by a trans guy in the early 90s. It's like one of the first contemporary trans dude memoirs out there, and I happened to meet him at a camp for Men of Trans Experience I was at earlier this year, and he wrote that book when he was 29. I'm also 29, so we had a lot in common to talk about, and it was really fun to meet him. But he was the one who said the thing of like, oh yeah, I'm happy to be an advocate and an educator most of the time, especially like he's a teacher, so he likes teaching the middle schoolers he teaches about this stuff. But he was like, if a coworker is asking me something too personal, I just hand him my book now. I'm just over it. And I was like, that sounds like a great strategy. I'm gonna steal that.
Good advice for this episode of the podcast, honestly.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure my publisher loves that strategy of mine. It's like, yeah, sell more books. Go buy the book.
I don't feel like that advice is as general as you're assuming, Alexis, because I don't think the average person can just be like, read my book.
Nonsense. Just, read my book. It doesn't exist, but it probably will in the future, so you better figure out time travel.
I carry around this unpublished memoir at all times just to answer this question.
Pocket-sized, unpublished memoir, like a pocket constitution.
You just open it. It's just like one page, and it just says "Mind your own business."
Yes. Well, that's kind of what I was gonna say when it's it's like my unpublished memoir, but also there's a difference between asking any old trans person to explain Trans 101 to you and asking a trans person who has like committed their career to educating people. I got asked this question at an event I was at earlier today, and I was like, yeah, like my job literally is educating people, and yes, I might still get exhausted by it, but like if I'm in a space where there are multiple trans people and like I'm the only one where this is my job, then if some cis person has like a basic trans question, they should not be asking those other trans people. It's not their job. It's my job, so you can ask me, but it's not their job to have to do that. So yeah, maybe everyone else's book can just say mind your own business, and then those of us who have put our books out there, we can be the teachers and take some heat off everyone else.
Just thinking of that one like Parks and Recreation scene with like Ron's permit.
Yes.
I can do what I want, Ron.
Yeah. I love it. I want a t-shirt that says that or something. But is Ron Swanson holding the paper that says it? That's what I want the t-shirt to be. Just
carry around Nick Offerman wherever you go.
I would love to. He is such a delight.
I'm sure he has nothing better to do than follow around everyone. Anyway, back to the book. Do you plan to do more writing, or have you kind of told your story and not planning to write more books?
I don't think I'd write another memoir, at least not anytime soon, but I definitely want to do more writing. I would love to do some more creative nonfiction on like a variety of different topics, and I would like to eventually write a novel. I'm trying to write one now, not the same one I was trying to write before. That's a bad idea. But yeah, I definitely want to keep writing in all kinds of ways and just kind of see where it can go. I grew up writing all the time. That was like the main thing I always wanted to do, and then I just kind of fell away from it when I started my like professional career out of college. And kind of it's one of, like you grow up doing something or always wanting to be something, and then like adult life starts and you forget about it. And that kind of happened to me, and so it's been fun to like get to go back to writing and get to try it again and realize that I still really, really enjoy it.
Well, hey, while you're working on that novel, you could take some advice from Setting the Record Queer episode 17 with Taylor Brooke and 29 with Rosie Thor. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Nice.
Anyways, 17 was also about special effects makeup, but they were an author, so we had that conversation too. But anyways, not going to advertise for my podcast on my own podcast. So let's talk about your vlogging a little bit next, and like your YouTube channel and your speaking and stuff like that. So I think you may have covered this a little bit, what sort of general format of channel you are, but how do you decide what topics to talk about?
It's a combination of things. I have a like giant list on my Todoist app of just anytime I think of something that maybe could be interesting or could be a good idea. So that's just an ongoing list. And so sometimes when I'm sitting down to like figure out the production plan for the next 3 or so months, I'll like go check out that list and see what I might be able to pull from. Sometimes it's just like, seasonally, what's going on? Is there anything I might want to talk about? Like today I was supposed to put out a video, maybe it'll go up tomorrow, about Halloween-themed books that I have enjoyed reading that I want to recommend to people. Those videos of mine never do too well, but I like doing them, so I put them up anyways. And that's another way I decide things, too. I try to do a rule of thirds, where a third of my videos are things that I just like. Maybe no one else is going to like them, but I'm enjoying doing them. Another third is videos that I think my core audience, the folks who've been around forever, and my like main supporters, are really going to enjoy. And then the last third is videos that I think might spread beyond and help me grow my audience. So that's times where I might be like, oh, it's Halloween, I should make something Halloween-ish, or here's this thing in the news right now that people are talking about, or here's something like in the trans community people are talking about, and I'm going to make a video on that. And of course, those three categories can overlap. That's the best when it's something that's all three of them. That's a slam dunk. But yeah, I try to sort of divide my decisions among that, so I'm not ever I definitely don't want to ever be making videos where I'm just trying to like be popular and get the clicks, but I also, it's a thing, it's a part of my job, it's something I make money from, so I also don't want to just do videos that probably won't succeed. You got to try to find that kind of balance. But I get a lot of ideas from like comments and messages from people. Whether it's like straight up, you should make a video on this topic, or it's I start seeing maybe a theme in the kinds of stories that I'm hearing from people of different experiences that they had, especially when I start hearing points of confusion, when various people are like, I didn't know you could do this, or they had something in their transition where they were like, I wish I had known this one thing. And that's when I sort of am really like, oh, this maybe is something that other people need to know. It's like when you're in class and you were scared to ask a question, but turns out everyone had the same question. I really try to find topics that might be that thing that there isn't that much information and resources on, or at least they're really hard to find. But it turns out like a lot of people are confused about, or a lot of people had that experience and they want to hear someone talk about it.
I just nodded, but like we're on a podcast, so
we do that so often. Through. You'd think we'd learn. We don't even. A little behind the curtain here. Discord was acting up, so we don't even have each other's videos, so we have no excuse for posturing towards the camera.
I mean, I feel like that's where the habit comes from, because we record on video to help with like the flow of conversation. Except that video does not come to the episode. And if anyone's about to ask us to start doing video episodes, the answer is no.
People would notice when we cut like 15 minutes out of the middle.
I mean, you say this, but I feel like a popular like style, and like our fine guest here could probably talk about this. A style I notice a lot in like vlog type content, although I haven't seen this as much recently, but it was definitely a thing for a couple of years, was just tons and tons of hard cuts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was very, very popular in the earlier days of YouTube and pre-YouTube. It was, mostly kind of established by Zay Frank before YouTube was out, but then a lot of the earlier vloggers also adapted it. And in those earlier days, it was, I mean, it's always had a point of, like, a basis in both practicality and style. The practicality being, you're your own director and writer and performer, and you're wearing every hat all at one time, so you're not going to get these amazing perfect shots, and you're not going to go out there and find B-roll to cover the cuts like people do on newsreels and in movies or whatever. So that was sort of the basis in practicality, but there's been different styles of doing it over the years. In the early days, like, anytime you had a cut, you would be like in a different position in the frame, or like closer up or further away. And that has kind of gone out. People will still do jump cuts, but they're not as fast, and you don't like jump around frame when you do them anymore. But it's a little hard to not do them at all, because there is that awkwardness of it's not a great idea to just turn on the camera and not know what you're going to say and just like go off for 20 minutes. I mean, that's another thing that changed, was the length maximum on YouTube just got longer and longer over the years. It used to be 5 minutes, and now it's like, I don't know, 70 hours or something. It's like super long. It's as long as you want. And ads have changed as well. Now you can play ads in the middle of videos if your video is over 10 minutes. So everyone started making videos that were longer than 10 minutes. And now you've got these like 45-minute rant videos that are hardly edited at all. But of course, it's a much better viewer experience if it is edited and cleaned up a little bit. And if you're just one person straight to camera, no other footage in there, then there's going to be some cuts in there still. But I personally think it works better if you're a little intentional with them, and it's not like in the middle of a sentence or something, but it's like, when you're changing topics, or, there's some type of flow with it where it works. It's not just completely haphazard. But I will say, to the podcast point, like, when I started making podcasts, I was like, ooh, this is so much easier. I don't have to worry about like what it looks like if I want to cut out like, this word or this or something.
We have the magic of crossfading and silence.
Yeah, it's
so good.
God, I cannot imagine what it would be like to make videos the length of these episodes.
Oh God, no. I mean, there's probably a reason the average podcast is longer than the average YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I
think that's probably the main one.
It's like, I can sit here and you don't notice. I didn't actually have a punchline to this joke before I started saying it. I thought one would just come to me. But anyway, let's ignore that, and let's talk about you kind of with the cuts. You kind of talked a little about this, but let's get into more detail. What's the process for making one of these videos?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, I usually am about 3 months-ish out on a production plan, where I sort of look at, okay, here's every other Wednesday for the coming 3 months. What video am I going to put out on each of these days? Are there any holidays I want to tie it to, or any like flagship events? Like, is it Pride? Something like that. And once I've decided on those topics, I usually shoot not a full, yes, actually sometimes a full week before the video goes up. And I'll have been writing it for a few days before then, if it's a video that I'm really writing. There are some videos that are more on the fly, where I maybe have just thought of some bullet points. And then there's ones, especially the more educational ones, where I want to make sure I get everything right. So I literally write every word. But when I write out video scripts, I often like speak them. Like, I'll do a voice memo or something first, or I'll just like speak aloud as I'm typing. I'm a very annoying talk to myself kind of person, because I want to get them in the natural flow of my voice, so they don't sound like super performed essays or something. So yeah, there's several days, I mean, or sometimes several weeks if it's a more intense, serious video, of writing and preparation. And then I'll shoot, and I'll give myself several days to edit, because I like to have pretty clean edits and maybe do some color correction or fix the audio and stuff like that. And then they'll go up and there's increasingly more that has to be done after a video is posted online, because there's just so much like social media due diligence you have to do that I don't do enough of. And there's also, you got to make the thumbnail, and you've got to add the captions, and you've got to have all the description box stuff set. So yeah, there's a lot to it on that side of things, but also getting there. Like that video that I was supposed to put up today, that hopefully I'll finish tonight so it can be posted tomorrow. Like, it's not the best video I've ever made. There's some parts of it that I'm just like, ugh. And it almost feels like a rushed job, but actually I've been working on it for a very, very long time. So I think it's always, and this is with any like medium or artistry, like there's so much more to it than I think people see. Like, I'm sure you both could share a ton of like how there is so much more to this podcast than people probably imagine.
Yep. I very much feel what you're saying on not doing enough due diligence with social media. It's hard.
Oh, it's the hardest thing in the world.
It seems like it should be so easy, but it's just such a grind. You
have to keep track of when, and you have to make sure, like, to hit the proper times to do things, and, like, we release our episodes at midnight, and we can't tweet them out at midnight, because midnight's a terrible time to tweet things out, because no one's going to see the tweets, and...
Yeah.
I think my big thing is, like, when I'm done with a video, like, I just feel so done with it. I just don't want to think about it. So if I haven't already, like, prepared the social media before the video is public, like, it's pretty rare that I'm actually going to post about it enough, because I just feel done with it.
That's probably
so once you've done all that, once you've got the video up, you've done the social media grind, and you've mentioned how much your channel has grown. What do you do in order to like foster a community around your channel? Because it's clear that there is one.
Yeah, it gets harder as it gets bigger, because anytime there's a more popular video, or if some popular account mentions me, you get a barrage of harassment and stuff. And I feel like within my core community, even as I've grown, I've done a good job of not having a lot of those trolls, or worse than trolls. Sometimes I don't like belittling. I almost feel like sometimes saying trolls makes it sound not as serious as it is in some cases, because sometimes it's not just people trying to be funny. Sometimes it's like seriously dangerous people. But anyways, I don't read the comments as much as I used to, because there is more of the harassment stuff now. I'll read comments and reply to them shortly after a video goes up, but not for much longer after that, because once it starts picking up traction, it starts picking up, the negative comments as well. So I'm not doing as good a job as I used to. But I think, the biggest thing that has helped is you can sort of model the kind of feedback that you want. So, I try to be upbeat and have an optimistic view on things, and people respond in a similar way. And, if I get something wrong, I'm really happy to like admit that I got it wrong and have a conversation with someone. And if those, negative harassing people do come in, I don't pay attention to them. I don't respond in any way. I will block them a lot, especially if they're leaving any kind of, really negative stuff with slurs or anything like that. I will usually block or delete their comments, because I also know that my videos are things that parents are going to, younger kids are going to, people in like a very vulnerable state are going to. So it's not so much that like my feelings are hurt by seeing something like that, but I don't want someone who is new to this or nervous about their or their loved one's trans identity to like go to this video that's supposed to be helping them, and they scroll down and they just see all these like slurs and really disgusting things being said. And I think like keeping that off of my videos has helped kind of foster a sort of nicer, more uplifting community where people can feel safe going to my channel.
That all seems good. This is one of those questions that's like, I don't know how to follow that up. That was a good answer. I cannot expand on that.
Well, thanks.
Does your community extend beyond just YouTube? Do you have any like spaces you specifically foster for people to talk in, or do you just not do that?
I don't too much. People keep asking me to start a Discord. Not so much. I think I might at some point. I have a Patreon, and sometimes there's a little bit of conversation there. I did a lot of that when I was working for the Harry Potter Alliance. We had a lot of different spaces for members to talk to each other, and it was part of my job to help manage those spaces and foster them and stuff like that. So maybe I just got a little burnt out on it after doing it professionally for a while, because anytime I think of it, I'm just like, well, I don't know. And I think I know that there's probably not that big of a demand. Like, maybe I could build a community up, but I don't think there's an existing one that would, like, move from one of my social media platforms to some type of forum or something. I don't know how much of a demand there really is for me to do that. Even though a couple of individuals might say it, like, I don't know if that would actually turn into a lively community.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
And I guess I also think, like, why do I need to make it branded of, like, mine? Like, I don't know, maybe I could, if I had a good idea for, like, here's a community of a certain type of person and let's all get together there, and I wanted to be the community manager of that, then I would do that. But I don't think it sits well with me to be like, here is a channel just like a Slack channel or a Discord channel just for fans of me. Now talk amongst yourselves. Like, I know that that's a thing people do, but it seems odd for me to do it. For some reason, I don't think it's weird when other people do, but it would feel weird if I did.
Join the Setting the Record Queer Discord server.
There we go.
Yeah.
Kaylee, you phrased that like a joke. It's not a joke, though. Come join our Discord server.
But that's also different. That's like of a show. That's not of one person,
I mean, I also have a personal Discord, but, like, this isn't about me, so.
Oh, yeah. Also, that seems like a thing you do on Discord. I'm new to it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get where you're coming from, where, like, that may or may not work person by person. And I also think with my personal community, it's like I'm sort of in charge of it, and in theory it centers around me, but that's not really the case anymore. It sort of became, just a social group.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, this isn't about me. I just thought it was an apt comparison. But let's talk about what sort of broader community there is in the spheres of stuff that you do, both in terms of, like, fans and consumers of content, and, like, maybe even the creators of content. Are there any, like, places or groups or other sorts of resources or social things that you're a part of as a person who does what you do?
Well, definitely the Harry Potter fan community, specifically people in the, like, Wizard Rock side of things and folks who have gone to LeakyCon over the years. Those are my main folks, or, like, Harry Potter Alliance members and people who have been involved with the organization. That's like my home base of community, online but also in person, and that's a wonderful community. But there's definitely been some trans communities I've been a part of, especially, like, trans, I guess you could say creators, but different types of artists. Like, there's some Facebook groups for, like, trans theater people and trans filmmakers and stuff like that I'm a part of. And that's always really great because you can kind of swap tips on, like, here's this production that's happening that is actually made by trans people, or, like, don't go to this audition because this producer is transphobic and they'll treat you this way. All of those ways that it's really helpful when you're in a marginalized community to get some of that insight. Yeah, those are the main ones, I guess. I feel like I have the thing where you get to be a part of a new group and then there's, like, 5 people there that you know from another part of your life. That keeps happening to me.
I definitely experience that a lot, especially with a lot of the communities I hang out in.
Yeah, I think that might just be more common in trans communities, honestly. I'm not sure if that would be due to, like, the relative size of our communities, given, the populations, or some other fact. I don't know. I have definitely experienced that too.
I mean, in my experience, it seems to be a lot of, like, hey, people want to hang out in communities, and, like, if the community is queer friendly, then all the queer people are going to go hang out in there, especially if it's people you know and therefore probably have common interests with you. Because a lot of the ones have moderation problems where the mods kind of just let queerphobes... They might not necessarily be queerphobic themselves, but they sure do let the queerphobes run free because they don't really understand how to properly moderate a community as a community leader because they don't have the correct perspective, so they let the queerphobes talk about queerphobia and all the queer people move somewhere else.
That's actually a really good point, yeah. Of, like, yeah, maybe we bump into each other because we have found the only spaces where we feel safe or comfortable.
Yeah. I think that number of spaces has been consistently growing in recent years. But
totally.
That's definitely true.
Yes, but the number of Discord servers you're allowed to join is 100.
Good for me to know as a new Discord user. keep bringing these good facts for me. Pro tips.
Welcome to Skype, but better, and Slack, but for gamers. Except not necessarily for gamers, but it's like Slack if you don't like business and do like having a dark mode.
It's like Slack if every time you boot up Slack, it just memed at you.
Yeah. Yeah, that part isn't the best, but...
Oh, it's Slaxler. No one's gonna get that.
Anyway.
That was a joke referencing a specific personal friend.
Does said friend listen to the pod?
I don't think so.
Maybe, maybe not. If not, he should. If you are listening to this and you know who you are, we appreciate you.
This is a good reason to make them listen. I make him listen on this one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little treat just for you.
So how can if someone's looking to get started in kind of the stuff that you do, whether that's writing or speaking or vlogging, really just any of this, what tips would you give this hypothetical person? You know, what sort of stuff would you have liked to have known when you started?
Great question. I think the first thing I always think of is to really consider, why you want to do it. What are your objectives? And going along with that, really think about what your boundaries are going to be and consider your privacy and the consequences of any information that you might be sharing. Because, especially if you're an LGBTQ plus person wanting to share your experiences, that can get personal very quickly and also could be dangerous very quickly. I mean, it takes very little attention on the internet to start facing the consequences, whether negative or positive. So just sort of, be aware of all of the risks, because there are definite risks, and especially just the way social media keeps growing in all of these weird ways, and the influencer bubble's gotta pop sometime soon, and they're all stealing our data, and I don't know, there's a lot of stuff going on with social media. I would probably not start a social media career right now if I didn't already have one, but I do think it is good for more and more people to keep sharing their stories, especially people from marginalized communities, because we need our voices to be heard. We need more diverse looks at everything, like all of the different people in our communities, and not just a bunch of, young white trans boys who look like me sharing our stories. We need, not that I'm that young anymore, but, we need a lot more diverse stories out there. And so I think more and more people should share their stories, but also it's a tough thing. It's demanding, and there are definite risks to it. So just think carefully about doing it, and don't pigeonhole yourself into one platform, one thing that you do. I mean, unfortunately, in the gig economy now, you cannot make a career off of just one thing. That's why I'm a writer and a speaker and a video maker and a pub quiz host and a consultant. And, you've got to do a bunch of different things. Don't make any sort of plan that is contingent on you going viral or becoming super famous on this one platform, because that's probably not going to happen. Just think about what your goals really are. If it's sharing your story or sharing some educational stuff, and think about how practically you can achieve those goals and what other things you might need to do as a means to an end to get there.
Mm-hmm. And not that I want to downplay that last answer, because that was great. In terms of the technical stuff, are there any recommendations for software or tools or resources that you would make? Because I can't speak for anyone else, but as a person who does a lot of audio stuff and even live streaming, making videos, recorded videos, is a really intimidating prospect.
And Windows Movie Maker is dead, so what hope is there for the rest of us?
There are more and more free video editing software out there. I cannot remember any off the top of my head, but I'm sure if you Google, they will be out there. If you are a student, you can probably get a student discount on Adobe Creative Cloud, which would give you access to Adobe Premiere Pro, as well as Photoshop and After Effects and all kinds of fun stuff. It is pretty prohibitively expensive, but the student discount helps. As far as like gear goes, there's more and more cheaper options out there on the market. Don't feel like you need to get the best camera, and especially like if you're just starting out and it's still kind of an experiment, like don't invest in something super expensive right away. Honestly, everyone's smartphones these days are more than good enough. Like a lot of them shoot in 4K. You can shoot on your phone when you're getting started. You can edit on your phone most of the time nowadays with iMovie and stuff if you got iOS. And, start with that and see how it goes. And then if, you feel like you really want to keep going, then you can look up what some other cameras you might want to get are. I mean, the great thing is there's so many creators out there who make content specifically on recommending gear and tutorials of software and like, here's how to do this. So, one thing I have always believed, especially when it comes to video making, is come up with the idea and the content first and then figure out how to do it, because there's enough stuff to look up online to figure it out. This is really like mostly with regards to sort of editing or maybe shooting things of like, oh, I have this vision of this like cool effect I want to do. Awesome. Just figure out how to do it. If your production quality isn't that high, it's okay if your content is there. If you've got an amazing story, if you've got great charisma on camera, people will come back for that. That's not as true as it used to be. Like 10 years ago, we could be like, like shoot on a potato, no one cares so long as you've got a great story. And it's a little different now because people have different ways of trusting and judging production quality, but it's still fairly true. There was a podcast, I forgot which one it was, but it got started and they had like really bad microphones, but it was like, I think 2 women who were hosting, and it was just a really great show. And so a couple of their followers reached out and was like, hey, we love your show. Your audio is terrible. Can we please buy you some equipment? And so their followers just bought them microphones. That's not going to magically happen to everyone, but I love that example because it's like, people were committed enough to what they were doing to want to help them out, give them that leg up to get a little bit better production, but they were still bought in even with the lower production quality.
Well, I don't have a segue, but last question of the segment. Can you tell us about whatever upcoming events are coming up that are relevant to you, relevant to vlogging or memoiring? Or
memoiring.
Yeah, memoiring.
Memoiristing.
Yeah.
That's it, definitely.
Ooh, that's the one. Memoiristing. Yeah. 2 memoiristing events in New York City coming up. In November, I've got one at the Village outlet of the New York Public Library at Jefferson Market, so that's in Greenwich Village. Don't remember when these are, but I'll send you a little link to my website, jacksonbird.cool/events, and you can get all this info. But there's also
jacksonbird.cool is an amazing URL.
Jacksonbird.com was taken, so I was like, well, I guess we're going with this.
It's better
Thank
though.
you.
You got the better one.
Thank you.
Honestly,
the cheaper one, which is helpful. But the other event is in Astoria in Queens, at the Astoria Bookshop, and that's also in November. So those are just 2 book events. I also have a book event in Boston on December 11th, I think, and that's actually with a fellow trans writer. He's a novelist. He's got a new novel coming out in December. His name's Alex Myers. His first book, which I highly recommend, is called Revolutionary. It's a historical fiction novel about his ancestor, Deborah Sampson, who served in the Revolutionary War as a man. And I just think it's so awesome that her descendant is a trans guy who told her story. So that's cool. Alex and I are going to do an event together in Boston. And then right after that, I am taken off on a little quick tour with Harry and the Potters, the wizard rock band. They host Yule Balls across the East Coast in DC, Boston, and New York every year that has a couple of wizard rock bands, and I will specifically be puppeteering with the Potter Puppet Pals. So if you are into Harry Potter at all and you're near to one of those cities, highly recommend checking them out. Those are around December 14th-ish.
I didn't know the Potter Puppet Pals were still around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were performing at LeakyCon 2 weeks ago. They do live shows here and there, and they put out an amazing music video actually in conjunction with Harry and the Potters this summer. It's one of the new songs from Harry and the Potters, but it also stars Kimya Dawson, if you're familiar with her. She's from the Moldy Peaches, which was like all of the music in Juno.
Sorry, the moment that you said Potter Puppet Pals, my brain just shut off and started going, Snape. Snape. Severus Snape.
Yeah, my brain went to the same place. I was just like, my instant reaction was like, oh, they're still around? You'd think they would have been blown up by that time bomb by now, because that's the only video of theirs that I know. And I'm sure for someone like you who's so tuned into that fan space, that's just like, oh, yeah, come on. That was their early, unrefined work, and you need to see what they've been doing recently. And that's all I got in my brain is just, it's a time bomb.
Mega Man 2 is the only good one. That was usually...
In their live shows, that's usually my job, is I come out and just throw the confetti as the time bomb. Yeah.
For the record, I said that to give Alexis the same feeling she was talking about. It's not an actual opinion. But yeah, I think with all that, it's time to move into our next segment. Jackson has picked out a segment from his book that he is going to read to us. Why don't you set up the context? Not that I'm even sure it really needs context. Yeah, let's get to that.
Yeah, this is one that doesn't need as much context as usual when I do a passage, so great. But basically, Halloween is coming up. Is it still coming up when this episode comes out?
It just passed.
It just passed.
I love Halloween, so Halloween lasts for like 3 more weeks.
Yes. I mean, Sitting the Record Queer is just getting ready for Halloween like 360 days early. Like,
love it. That is my
Halloween
vibe.
2020, we are leading the trend.
We are Jack Skellington. We refuse to admit it's over. We're going to steal Christmas. Make it Halloween.
Yes. I love it. Okay, well, so here is a little bit of, this is like an overview kind of all of my Halloweens growing up, basically. So, all right, here we go. I suppose I always liked dressing up and putting on costumes, so long as I didn't have to dress like a girl. When I went over to friends' houses and they pulled out their dress-up boxes, I would make a beeline for the cowboy costume, the doctor's jacket, or their dad's old ties. Anything not to have to don their my-size Barbie princess dress. For Halloween, my mom would usually sew my brother and me a costume for whatever we wanted to be that year, and then get out her old tackle box of stage makeup from her cosmetology school days and paint our faces to match. Big white puffs of powder for the ghost costume, a drawn-on widow's peak and some fake blood when my brother was a vampire, a spot around my eye to go with my 101 Dalmatians outfit. Every now and then we'd buy our costumes from the store, like in 1995 when I saw a shelf of Power Rangers costumes while we were grocery shopping and I had to have one. I immediately spotted the lone blue Power Ranger suit under an overflowing stack of the popular red and pink ones. No one wanted to be Billy, the nerdy blue Power Ranger, and that was part of why I loved him. I loved him so much that I had named my doll I got for my birthday that year after him, and when my cousins tried to play a prank on our second cousin, who we were all meeting for the first time at a family reunion, by switching our names around, I ruined it by insisting my name was Billy. My brother tried to reasonably explain that I needed to lie and say my name was Brooke, like our dog, because it was a girl's name and I was a girl. I didn't understand why, if we were playing pretend anyway, I couldn't just be Billy. As I started digging under all the red Tommy and pink Kimberly costumes for Billy's blue one, I hesitated. Mom would never let me dress up as a boy Power Ranger. Austin would make fun of me for it, just like he had after the family reunion. I sighed and picked out one of the pink Kimberly costumes, holding it up to my mom. She looked surprised. "You're sure this is the one you want?" I nodded, thinking that being a Power Ranger at all was cool enough. I could suck up wearing pink if I at least got to be a Power Ranger while I did it. I had never dressed explicitly as a boy for Halloween. I wore boy-ish costumes like monsters and Grim Reapers, but somehow the thought that I wouldn't be allowed to be a boy even just for Halloween stuck with me. By the time I was in 4th grade, the Harry Potter books had recently been published in the United States, and Potter frenzy was at an all-time high. I'd gotten the first book from the Scholastic Book Fair, and after spending a week drudging through the first chapter of backstory, I was hooked. One of my favorite things about Harry Potter was how, at the beginning of the series, he's just this average, if sometimes weird kid at a normal school. But then, on his 11th birthday, a giant of a man comes out of nowhere and whisks him away to a magical world that he was meant to be a part of his whole life. I used to dream about this happening to me, that one day Professor McGonagall or Sirius Black would show up at my front door and take me away to the wizarding world. It was my destiny and they needed me, but, they'd have to use magic to disguise me as a boy. Would that be okay? Even escapist dreams aside, there was a lot to love about Harry Potter. It took place at a boarding school, for starters, something entirely foreign and enticing to me at the time. And that boarding school was filled with eccentric teachers, delicious food, and classes far more interesting than math and grammar. It was funny, too, and occasionally gross or scary. 3 of my favorite things at that age. So, of course, when Halloween rolled around, the first one at our new house in a nicer neighborhood, I wanted to dress up as someone from the Harry Potter books. I'd seen on the news that pretty much every kid in the world was dressing up as the boy wizard himself. Appalled by the idea that I would have the same costume as anyone I ran into while trick-or-treating, I decided to be unique and go as Hermione. This was several years before the movies came out, so interpretations of what Hogwarts students wore still varied widely, especially in the United States, where we didn't have the same concept of school uniforms with striped ties and sweaters that they do in the United Kingdom. So my mom and I picked out various fabrics from the store, solid black and silk and gray chiffon with shimmering purple spiderwebs. My mom sewed them into a cape and cloak paired with a matching black witch's hat. I'd been so excited throughout the whole process, but when I put the costume on a few hours before trick-or-treating, I hated how it looked. The cloak was too short, the sparkling fabric too girly. We'd teased my hair up a bit to give it Hermione's trademark bushy look, and I thought it made me look stupid. I was panicking, tears in my eyes, because I was supposed to go trick-or-treating with the cool girls in our new neighborhood, and I was too mortified to be seen wearing this costume. Fortunately, we still had a box of all the costumes my mom had sewed for Halloween over the years. The only one that still fit me, and barely, was the Scarecrow costume my brother had worn when he was 6. Before Harry Potter came along, The Wizard of Oz had been my favorite book series, so it was a happy trade. I got to wear my regular jeans with the blue and white plaid shirt from the costume box. I felt comfortable. Everything was working out. But then I met up with the neighborhood girls, and they, without having mentioned anything to me, had all decided to dress up as movie stars, which was really an excuse for each of them to wear their fanciest dresses and lots of makeup that they wouldn't usually be allowed to wear. I felt completely foolish next to them with my squashed straw hat and fake hay sticking out of my too small flannel shirt. At one of the houses we went to, the woman there held me back after the other 3 had gotten their candy and skipped off giggling to the next house. She looked me in the eyes and told me how brave I was for being myself, and then she gave me an extra handful of candy. I appreciated the sentiment, and the extra Snickers bars, but it didn't change anything. I was still stuck wearing an ill-fitting Scarecrow costume while everyone else in the group flounced around in glittery dresses with feather boas. Not that I would have been caught dead dressed like them, I just wished it wasn't so strange for me to be different.
What I'll start with is, when you're sitting down to write something like that, how do you bring it together? What's that process like?
Yeah, so I'm a really heavy outliner. I had so many different phases of outlines when I was working on this. I didn't outline as much for the original zine, so I guess I also had that. I was working off that original manuscript, and so it was a little bit easier to be like, okay, where do I want to expand? How do I turn this into a larger story? But yeah, I had digital versions of outlines, then I had note cards that I was moving all around and back and forth. So then by the time that I needed to actually sit down and flesh out the outline, it was really easy because the outline was very detailed. Things still changed here and there, and I would also definitely have moments of inspiration on the subway or something, and I would just type something real quick on my phone, and then that would end up in something. But for me, it's just a lot of planning, and then you just kind of sit down and try to create the scene. Even though so much of my book is very reflective and, just kind of telling things very quickly, I still wanted to make it as sort of, descriptive and visual-ish as I could. So that's a fun part for me, is just okay, what words should I string together here so people really understand what I'm trying to get across?
This might be kind of a weird comment, but just something that sticks out to me is just I guess I'm impressed with just the way you can remember all this stuff, because my memory of that early in my life, heck, my memory of being 15 or whatever, is so blurry and hard to remember. So just being able to remember all these Halloween stories is
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's because I do really like Halloween, so I remember a lot of them. But I did, I took time, I read back a lot of my old journals, which I have kept on and off since I was 6 years old. I looked at a lot of old pictures, and both of those originally were because I knew I wanted to incorporate them visually in the book, which they are, but it ended up being really useful to kind of jog my memory on a lot of those things. So maybe I have a slightly better memory, but mostly I had a lot of documentation to help me remember.
I forgot you mentioned those.
With something like this, it's just I feel like this speaks for itself. And, like, I'm also not a literary critic, so...
Fun fact, I competed in literary criticism in high school, because in Texas, everything's a competition.
Oh, in that case, can you write an essay on this book?
Oh, I would be pretty critical, I think.
It's amazing how the essay he wrote about this book is the exact same number of words as the book. It, like, I was just so impressed with how, like, deeply he understood the themes in the book. And, like, he got it on a level that I don't think anyone else did.
I've read your 5-paragraph essay, and I'm gonna have to give it a C. I just don't think you understood the author's intention.
Two very different teacher remarks here.
I mean, if you have an English teacher telling you didn't understand the author's intention, maybe they should teach a different subject. But I digress.
Speaking of which, setting the record, queer listeners, I would like to remind you all that you owe me a literary analysis essay on Tarnished Are the Stars by the time you're listening to this. And now that is most certainly done and you've all turned them in, I will have them back to you next class. I'm sure they're wonderful. Your next assignment for setting the record, Queer Book Club, is Sorted by Jackson Bird.
You should read this book, though, by the way, people listening.
Yes, you should read this book. Good. You should also read Tarnished Are the Stars.
Yeah.
They're both real.
I gotta say, there's the cover of this book is like the erase check mark, and I do keep trying to brush the eraser marks off.
Yeah, I'm just punking everyone with that.
Yeah, the cover was like, I mean, surprise, it was the first thing I noticed with the book, but it did really stand out to me. Did you design that?
Well, thank you. It's awesome hearing that feedback from people that it stood out, and I love that I have just pranked people with the eraser mark unintentionally. I did not design it. I kind of conceptualized it. The eraser mark was all the designer, though. Sarah Smith, the amazing cover art designer, and basically we went back and forth on titles for a long time. When I finally came up with Sorted, I felt like the imagery that is on, so the cover is like these two check boxes of male and female, and there's kind of a like erased check mark on female and then a very clear check mark on male. And I felt like we needed, like, I kept saying there needs to be like a vintage form or something with like check boxes so people understand the idea of like sorting into genders or sorting into different categories in life, because I didn't feel like the title stood on its own without some kind of imagery. And I never got more creative than that. I was like, I don't want it to be what I'm explaining, but I want it to be something like that. I didn't want it to be that cliche. And so when I initially got this the first time without the eraser mark, I was like, well, I guess if we can't think of anything better, like aesthetically it looks great. I don't like conceptually, I don't know. And then when the designer added the erased check mark, I was like, sold. That's amazing. So good. I'm into it.
It's a really good bit of design.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I keep saying thank you, but like it was Sarah, so Sarah Smith, the most easily Googleable name.
Well, thank you, one of like 7 billion Sarah Smiths, and great job. Anyways, I don't know if you have any other questions, Kaylee, but I really feel like this passage stands on its own.
My question comes from Googling Jackson Bird, and like, how do you be good at cricket?
Yeah, we haven't talked at all about my cricket career. No, don't you love, so when you Google me, there is an Australian cricket player who is also named Jackson Bird, but when you Google us, he has the card that comes up because he's a professional sports person with Wikipedia and stuff, but all but one of the pictures are me. And so it kind of looks like the pictures of him growing up. It's like his childhood pictures, because I look so much younger even though we're only a few years apart.
That is amazing. I did look you up earlier just to grab the link to your YouTube channel, and I did notice that. I didn't put 2 and 2 together on the pictures, though.
I mean, my favorite part about it is that, like, all of the results, and I know your mileage may vary with this, with Google's, like, algorithms. All of the results are you, except for one, but the other Jackson gets the title card on the right.
Yep. Yeah, I know. Well, I think once I eventually get a Wikipedia, it'll do one of those where you click which one you mean kind of thing, because I've seen that when I've Googled other people and things before. But yeah, it's funny. Like I have, especially with the book coming out, I have Google alerts just for, seeing where it's talked about or whatever. And I have to do like minus cricket, minus Australia. I finally had to do minus Michael too, because I kept getting, there's like a viral video of this bird that dances to Michael Jackson. And it was just all of my Google alerts every day.
I think I saw that going around Twitter, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, you are going to be in for a rough time when your book tour takes you to cricket arenas in Australia.
Oh, I know. Boy, that leg of my tour is going to be tough.
The other Jackson bird is just going to show up like, I didn't... Wait, which one of us was supposed to come here?
That's when you fuse together to become one unstoppable bird.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
I was just going to say all of the strength of the cricket player, all of the brains of the vlogger and memoirist. You are truly the ultimate man.
Oh, yeah. I want to be as swole as him. That'd be great. No, my favorite mix-up was someone sent me a screenshot on Instagram once. They had just been on YouTube and they'd been searching talking birds because, that's a funny thing to watch parrots or whatever on YouTube. So they searched talking birds and one of the results was my TED Talk. Just in between all these parrots.
Well, apparently...
That's beautiful.
Apparently Cricket Jackson Bird's nickname is Squid. So you can be Jackson Bird and he can be Squid Bird.
Oh, but that's actually even weirder because one of my nicknames is Kid Squid.
Oh no! Are you sure you're not a cricket player?
I might be him. We might be one.
The duality of the bird.
Well, I guess it's time to move on to listener questions. Alexis, where do we get listener questions?
Well, Kaylee, just gonna pass that ball to me and make me do the hard part. Yeah. Wow. We take listener questions from social media. We're on Twitter at STRQueercast. We also take them via email, settingtherecordqueer@gmail.com. And from our aforementioned Setting the Record Queer community Discord server at bit.ly/STRQcord. You can ask questions for us or for our guests in any of those places. So our first question, or maybe first two questions, came from Cube and Propagable in the Discord at pretty much the exact same time, asking, are you actually a bird?
Well, I might be two birds, as our last discussion revealed. No, I am a Homo sapien sapien, but I happen to have the last name of Bird, and it is spelled like the bird. You would be shocked how every time I'm at the pharmacy or wherever, all those places where they check your name, I have to spell my name for people, and then they feel silly after I spell it, but they were gonna spell it wrong. They always ask, how do you spell bird?
How do you spell bird? Yeah. Okay, that's great. Follow-up question from Maxley in Discord, who asked, why are you or are you not a bird?
Now that is a great question. I mean, I think that goes back to, it's a very existential question. Why was my patrilineage named Bird? I think that's what we have to investigate.
I think the question is, why have you not, anamorphed into a bird yet?
Yeah.
Kaylee, wrong episode of the podcast.
And I've never been, particularly into birds. Maybe it was just because I was, sick of bird stuff. I don't know. But I do love flying. I would love to fly. If I could have any magic ability, I'd want to fly. So that part of me is a little bird-like.
Okay, so then, would you want to anamorph into... What can fly that's not a bird?
Maybe a pterodactyl.
That'd be cool.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. They are birds, right? Birds are dinosaurs. I like the birds are dinosaurs thing, because then I feel like, ooh, maybe I'm a dinosaur.
The research is seeming to show that dinosaurs are more closely related to birds than reptiles.
Yeah, I'm into that.
I might be totally misunderstanding that. I am not a woman of science.
No, I
sort of
I
not
think you're
true,
right,
but
because they wouldn't be scaly and stuff. They'd be feathered.
Yeah, they were just big fluffy boys. Anyways, so following those questions and then that follow-up question, there was like a couple pages of bird puns.
Oh,
I'm not
great.
going to read all of them, but I feel like you'd want to know that happened.
Yes.
And then we got,
so
and
bad.
after that, like really serious, those like really serious, hard-hitting questions and that like really serious community discussion, we got one like joke question that I feel like was worth reading, honestly, which came again from Maxley in Discord, who asked, what's the most surprising challenge in writing a memoir? And then there's sort of two questions here. What's the most surprisingly nice or supportive part of vlogging?
Oh, okay. So most challenging part of writing a memoir, I mean, I think for me, the timeline was just really quick. So that's not applicable for everyone. But yeah, I was like on a really rushed timeline. So that was the most challenging thing for me. But I think broadly, it's just the realization that everyone is going to read it and trying not to remember that while you're writing, so you can still keep a kind of true story, but then like at least in editing having to remember that so that you can protect yourself and protect your loved ones and just make sure that you're not oversharing anything. I guess a memoir just is oversharing, but you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many people, like for however many negative people there are, there's so many more amazing, like supportive people. And so that's great. You just get to like interact with so many lovely people. But I especially love that I get to interact with so many people so that I get to hear so many different stories. And so that I never think that I know all the different ways there are to be trans out there and I know everything and I've heard every story, because like I'm constantly meeting more people with some experience I hadn't heard before. I think that's such a great privilege and blessing that I get to experience that. So that's one of my favorite things.
Despite our collective shared experiences, transitions are hard.
That was a good answer to that question. I don't have a follow-up.
That was a good segue, or like lack of it was a good meta segue though.
I've probably made that joke before though.
We make that joke
like I feel
every
like we've
third
run out of
episode.
joke transitions at this point, but oh well.
It's a good one still.
Hey, speaking of transitions we've already done, that last question had a letter K somewhere in it, maybe. I didn't actually check. I'm actually checking now. It didn't, but if I added a letter K into it, it would have, and that leads us nicely into Kaylee's question of the week.
Of course.
Now, if you have never listened to the show before, Kaylee's question of the week is like the sort of question that when you're going back through your old journals, you find one that's in your handwriting, but you don't remember writing, and it's just full of the same question repeated over and over again that you know you didn't write down, but it's unmistakably you. And that question is, if you could give any animal human intelligence and the ability to speak, which they'd immediately use to start a vlog, which type of animal would you pick?
Really? Ooh. Dog was kind of my first thought, but I don't know. I feel like, their thoughts might be kind of repetitive. Like there's probably a maybe more interesting dolphin. Nope, dolphin. Definitely dolphin.
Dolphin. That's a good one. I think I would like to see like a lifestyle traveling vlog with a bird. Not related to earlier conversation. I just like birds. Yeah. But I feel like that would be a fun one, especially with them like migrating south and then coming back up north. Like they get to see so much stuff.
Yeah.
And like, do so much flying. And I feel like a bird travel vlogger would be really great.
Okay, but here's my answer. Ready? Let's say you have a cat, right? And the cat rooms with a human vlogger who does unboxing videos, and then the cat does reviews of the leftover boxes.
That's amazing.
That's really good. You have the unboxing channel and then the reboxing channel.
I feel like a toddler could do that too.
Also, as a bonus, the cat
They
chews
boxes.
up whatever came out of the box.
Yeah, the deconstructed version of it.
Oh, for heck's sake, Miranda, you have human intelligence. Did you need to chew up my iPhone? No, but I did anyway.
That is exactly how a humanly intelligent cat would act too. All right, well, I think with that thought still in your brains about cats with human intelligence, the just like absolute debauchery that they would get up to just instantly, I think that is as good a place as any to call this podcast episode a wrap. Remember, listeners, book report on Sorted by Jackson Bird by next episode. After that, you will get a break, as it will be the end of author month that's spread over the back half of October and the beginning of November. Yeah, that's an episode. Jackson, thank you so much for coming on. This was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Naturally, we are always happy to have trans people on this podcast to tell their stories and that sort of stuff. It's kind of what we do. Yeah, so where can our listeners find you and your work and your videos and copies of your book?
Yeah, you can follow me at Jack is Not a Bird on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Technically Discord too. So far, Kaylee is my one friend on Discord as of tonight. But I don't know how long it'll be before I ever actually use Discord. So maybe not the best place to follow me. But I am Jack is Not a Bird everywhere. And you can get my book. It's called Sorted: Growing Up, Coming Out, and Finding Your Place. My place. But you'll find your place maybe when you read it too. Look at me, I'm so professional saying my book title wrong. It's in a lot of stores, but you can just search it online in any place you want to buy books. And if it's not at your local bookstore, you can request it, which they're always happy to do. You could also request it at your local library, and that's a fun way for you to get the book, but lots of other people to get it too. Support your local library.
Yeah, be sure to bring the trans propaganda into your local library.
Please do. And yeah, I read the audiobook. So if you're an audiobook listener, it is on Audible or available via CD as well if you want a CD version.
Reading your own audiobook sounds like an adventure. Although given how you read that passage that you did earlier, I would listen to that. So
Oh, good. I read it much better on the audiobook. I realized I hadn't read that passage in a while, and I sort of read a few sentences weird, and I feel a little congested as well. So I was like,
Well, hey, while you're waiting,
thank you.
While you're waiting for the next episode of this podcast, which there's a Taking the Minutes next week, but you should listen to the audiobook. It's a similar type of content. You'll probably enjoy listening to it.
Bam. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. You can have someone speaking words into your ears about queer experiences. You won't even know that you're waiting for another Setting the Record Queer, honestly.
Love it.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/settingtherecordqueer. Our patrons can get early guest reveals, access to a special Discord channel, high quality or early episode releases, and even special thanks on the show. We'd like to thank our $25 and up patrons, Jane, who you can find on Twitter as @callmecadejo, that's call me CADEJO, and American Choir Boy, who you can find on Twitch as American Choir Boy. Otherwise, if you liked this podcast, subscribe or leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Tell a friend or recommend us on your social media. You can find us on Twitter at STRQueercast, via email settingtherecordqueer@gmail.com, or join our Setting the Record Queer community Discord at bit.ly/STRQcord, all lowercase. While you're in any of those places, ask questions for us or for our guests. Give us feedback on the podcast. Maybe you have a cool idea for who or what could be on this podcast. Maybe you think you should be on this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Our logo was designed by Cubotic. That's at QBTIC on Twitter, or Cobot, QOBOT.tumblr.com. Our theme music and production is by Thrill Me Music. You can find more information about her work at thrillmemusic.squarespace.com. Hey, Kaylee, where can our listeners find you?
People can find me on Twitter at WitchesHex, that's WITCHS Hex, or you can follow SoulSync's development at SoulSyncGame, also on Twitter, that's SOULSYNC. You can follow me on Twitch at WitchesHex with an underscore between the witches and the hex. Hopefully I'll stream there someday soon.
That's a mood. Yeah, you can find me on Twitch and Twitter as Double Gear SYS, as in Double Gear System. And you can find my Final Fantasy XIV virtual photography stuff on Instagram as echo_white. That's EKHO_white as in the color. Still posting mostly pictures of Shimo though. Took a really pretty one in Mordona yesterday, and like the sky is all purple and it's great. And Shimo has a crown and it's good. And I like it more than anyone else probably, but it's there and you can look at it. Our next episode is going to be on Magic the Gathering judging with friend of the podcast, Jackal Girl. So look forward to that, as this is the last episode in Author Month because we are a, twice a month podcast. So 1 month is 2 episodes. Yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to check out Kaylee's next Taking the Minutes a week from when you're listening to this. And we will see you then and in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Memoir.
Memoir. That's what you are if you write a book about your life as a pirate. You're a memoir.
Memoir.
Wow.
This episode is off on a great foot because the other one is a peg leg.